Hello and welcome back to our Minimum Battles series. We're continuing our battles with all 151 Pokemon from Generation 1 up through Brock to see which ones can actually get through this rock-hard trainer. Brock is probably the toughest first gym leader in any edition of Pokemon. Whether it's Generation 1, Generation 2, all the way up to the present. Brock having rock-type Pokemon really walled so many Pokemon in the early game, because so many Pokemon start off with normal-type moves or flying-type moves that just don't do anything to his Pokemon. So, I thought I'd dig into why we want to fight on minimum battles. Minimum battles is a way to really level the playing field for all Pokemon, because there is no grinding, there is no opportunity to just level up past your problems. I see this with a lot of Pokemon YouTubers, where they get to a particular battle and they say, oh, this isn't working, so I'll go grind up some levels. Now, their content's fine, but it's not very compelling from a strategy standpoint, because you can get a Weedle to level 100 and use items and beat the Elite Four with it. I've done that myself plenty of times. All you gotta do is get some X attacks, get some X defense, get some X specials, and just batter your way through the Elite Four. If you do minimum battles, on the other hand, every Pokemon is completely capped in how much experience they can get, how strong they can get. You can use rare candies, you can use vitamins, but that's really it. Outside of that, you have to use good movesets, make good decisions, and really just outplay the competition. So, this way, we're going to make better content for you guys, and we're going to know, okay, if we wanted to choose a particular Pokemon to play through Generation 1, these are the best ones to start with. So, until now, we've played for the first 45 Pokemon of Generation 1, and of those, under half have made it through. We got the Bulbasaur line, Charmeleon, Charizard, of course the Squirtle line made it through, Butterfree was able to do it, Pidgeotto, Pidgeot, Arbok, because of wrap strategies, was able to get through. We used Surfing Pikachu and Raichu to be able to get through Brock. Nidoqueen was able to get through, as was Nidorino. Then Clefable was able to stall out, basically, and use Metronome in order to get random moves that would be super effective against Brock. So, it was able to make it through too. After that, Ninetales used Fire-type moves, and the Oddish line, of course, had super effective attacks to get through. The biggest shock so far was the fact that our Nidoking could not get through Brock, in spite of the fact that it was a powerful Pokemon and the evolved form of Nidorino. This was absolutely shocking to me. It was just that right mix of confusion and not doing quite enough damage to Brock's Pokemon that caused us to lose. Today, let's move on to the next 14 Pokemon in the generation. So, today we're going to use Parasect, Venomoth, or Venonat Venomoth, Diglett Dugtrio, Meowth Persian, Psyduck, Golduck, Mankey, Primeape, Growlithe, and my personal favorite Pokemon, the original legendary Pokemon in the whole game, Arcanine. Now, yes, I did say Arcanine is a legendary Pokemon. It's in its Pokédex in the first generation. Any player who played Pokemon Red version would find this Pokemon before Cerulean City. Basically, by getting a Growlithe and then buying a Firestone, you could have an Arcanine, your first legendary Pokemon, before you fought Eritha. And this thing is an absolute beast. When I was a kid, I had dreams about this fire dog. Its stats are some of the best in the game, and because of that, it's actually like legendary Pokemon in a slow level up group. But if there's any fire type, singular fire type that can make it through the game, I think that Arcanine is the one that's going to do it. Now, without further ado, let's get to today's challenge, okay? So we'll turn off the intro music, and let's get to our playthrough. So, Today, we are playing on Pokemon Yellow, of course. As usual, we will be playing in an emulator, but we will be going through each of these Pokemon one by one and seeing how many of them can get through Brock. We're going to try every reasonable strategy that we can with their given movesets, but of course some Pokemon just aren't going to do very well, whereas some Pokemon are going to do great. For today's Pokemon, I'll be very interested to see Parasect, which will learn Leech Life, and perhaps the limited amount of healing that it will be able to do will be just enough to beat Brock. Of course, Venomoth may have confusion in its moveset, and if it has confusion, then Brock's going to be a cakewalk. When we get to Diglett and Dugtrio, it really depends on whether or not they have a ground type move. Dugtrio, I'm pretty sure, will have Dig to start. Diglett, I think, will only start with Scratch, which is going to hurt it quite a bit. When we get to the Meowth and Persian line, the interesting thing is going to be their critical hit rate, especially for Persian. In Generation 1, the critical hit rate is determined by the base speed of the Pokemon. So, if you have a Pokemon that has really good speed, you're going to be able to get a lot of critical hits. That could be enough to get us through Brock, even with normal type moves. Golduck and Psyduck are going to be interesting. I don't believe they start with any water type moves, but they will get some trolly things like Disable that could help them. Then Mankey and Primeape, if they have the fighting type moves, of course they're going to get through. If they're using normal type moves, maybe not. And finally, Growlithe and Arcanine. We've already seen that fire type moves like Ember can really wreak havoc against Brock. Anything that does damage and has the chance to status him, causing him to use a full heal, basically buys us extra turns, and burn status in particular will lower his attack. So it's going to be a pretty good one to watch. Well, anyway, let's get to our gameplay. So today, we've got our Paras here. It's not a great Pokemon to start off with in this kind of challenge, I don't think. It starts off with only Scratch, and it's not an incredibly powerful Pokemon. It is somewhat tanky, like it has decent defense, but it's also not a Pokemon that I think is going to level up very quickly, and we're not going to learn any new moves before we get to Brock. Normally, Paras would learn Stun Spore at level 13, which you can get, by the time you're in Mount Moon, but it doesn't make any difference what we can learn by Mount Moon if we can't even get through Brock. So, this one I'm not too hopeful for, but we'll give it a couple attempts just to see how close we are. We will take up to 10 attempts per trainer, but if something's clearly not working, we're not going to waste a lot of time. You can see at some point that the damage ranges just aren't there, and that you would basically need the opponent to miss every single turn in order to get through. And that's very likely what we're going to be looking at with a Pokemon like Paras. So far what we've really seen in the first 45 Pokemon was basically 3 strategies really worked against Brock. The first strategy, of course, was to have a super effective move. Any Pokemon that has super effective moves, even a Pikachu that knows Surf, for example, basically one-shots his Pokemon, and that's GG. That's the end of anything. We've also seen that Pokemon that can deal damage, but also status at the same time, those Pokemon, of course, have a huge advantage because Brock has 5 full heals per Pokemon, and because he's sitting there using full heals, he's just basically giving you free turns to attack him, and in a lot of cases, that's really all you need, is just those full heals to attack him again. Usually when we use those moves, we're not really looking to status him so many times that he uses up all 5 of his full heals, as much as we just want him to use them enough that we get some sort of advantage on him. So the last strategy that seems to work is if we can get confusion off on his Pokemon, causing them to hit themselves in confusion. Even if we're not doing as much damage, the fact that they're hitting themselves, again, it wastes turns. He doesn't use full heals to heal confusion or anything like that, so he just has that status and it causes him to miss turns and cause damage to his own Pokemon. So far, those have been the best strategies that have worked. Paras has none of those, so we've just got a level 6 Paras here against Geodude, and as we can see, we're doing basically no damage, and the Geodude just takes us out. So, in this case, because we have only Scratch, there's not really anything that we could try to do to work around this. So, I think already, it's pretty clear that our first Pokemon, Paras, just doesn't have any way to beat Brock. It doesn't have the moves, it doesn't have any real opportunity outside of Brock missing like 20 times in a row for us to get through. So we're gonna go ahead and knock Paras off. That's our first Pokemon of today down. Now, let's look at Paras's evolution, Parasect. And this one could be a little interesting because Parasect will start off with Leech Life, if I recall correctly. Let's go ahead and start a new game on this. Yes, I do take a couple of early playthrough checks with some Pokemon that I think would be interesting or that I'm not sure what their moveset's gonna be. I was even looking through the old original official Nintendo guide to Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow to see what movesets it has marked in there, but I found that sometimes those movesets, as reported in that, even are wrong. That the Pokemon end up with movesets that are completely different. I'm not sure exactly why that would be, but I'm guessing that it's because they're just basing that off of when they would find the Pokemon naturally in the wild, for example. And the fact that they're just trying to find the Pokemon naturally in the wilds, yeah, of course, they're going to be at different levels, they're going to have different movesets at that point. Now, what we could see just now with Parasect is that it has Stun Spore, which could have some utility against Brock, in the sense that if we could get 6 Stun Spores off in a row, we could actually get the paralysis to stick on his Pokemon. And if we were able to do that, we might be able to get them to then miss turns, and that could end up helping us out. If we got it off 6 times in a row, one of the other factors is that Brock will use a full heal immediately. In Generation 1, the gym leaders seem to make their decisions after the player's turn. So, if the player caused damage, they might use a potion suddenly on a Pokemon that had full health, but now you've damaged it enough that it gets into a certain range and they just use a potion automatically. Or you might find a situation where, like with Brock, you status their Pokemon and they immediately use a full heal because the AI just thinks, oh, I've got status, I should heal that to prevent it from causing trouble. Now, full heals aren't perfect. We've seen that with burns in particular. Last time, when we were playing with the Vulpix, in fact, Vulpix wasn't quite able to get through within the confines of this structure where we take 10 attempts per trainer. But I went back and I played through a few more times, and I did actually manage to get a Vulpix run that would work. I may post that up later. Basically, what it came down to was that even when Brock uses the full heal, it doesn't remove the reduction in attack that comes from a burn. And because of that, basically, if you were able to get burns off on his Pokemon on the first 2 turns, the damage output would be low enough that Vulpix could actually get through. but you, especially on the Geodude, needed to get the first 2 turns to be burns. Alright, here we are at Brock, we've got Geodude, and for the first time, let's try some paralysis spam on him. Let's just see if that can do anything. Okay, so the Geodude is actually officially paralyzed now, and that just didn't work out. So the Geodude is gonna do a lot of damage to us no matter what we do. We're only level 6 and it's level 10, so of course it's gonna have a pretty big advantage there in that it's gonna be able to, you know, just deal more damage. But I think our only real way through this battle is gonna be to get the Geodude to actually stay paralyzed. So like this, and then try to just take it out. Now, it looks like Scratch is inferior to using Leech Life, and that makes sense, because Leech Life is stab, whereas Scratch doesn't have any real benefit. But basically then, we need a lot of luck with Geodude being fully paralyzed. Okay, and there we were able to get through Geodude, so that's pretty good. Now, we need to use Stun Spore more. But that didn't work out. So, on Onix, it might not be as important to get the Stun Spores off. Onix, of course, will have other moves than just attacking moves. It can use things like Bide, and that's really when we probably should have started spamming Stun Spore on it. We should probably have just used Leech Life before that. But the fact that we can see that it is possible to get through Geodude is a good sign. Okay. Like, that one won't work. We really need to get all of the Stun Spores off right at the beginning of the battle. 4, 5... Okay, 6 Stun Spores, and now we just need some luck, especially with paralysis. We need him to stay paralyzed. So that one just didn't quite work out, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paralysis. Okay, and we just need some luck, you know, don't hit us. Hey, don't attack me, Geodude. There we go, so we've gotten through Geodude. We actually have more health than last time, which is good. Okay, and one thing is Brock will not heal the Onix when it's paralyzed, and we can see there that we've run out of Leech Lives, which is fine because we still have Scratches, but as we can see, we just weren't able to get through. Let's try a couple more attempts here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 6 times that we got the paralysis off. We need to just keep spamming, and that didn't quite work. That last run where we got to Onix was probably our best run overall. Okay. And at this point, it's really just luck. It's just how many times can Geodude not attack us because it's fully paralyzed? Let's call this the last attempt here. This one looks like it's possible, but it really just comes down to it might take insane luck to get through. Okay. Like, it takes luck in terms of getting the 6 paralysis off. It takes luck in terms of getting the Geodude to actually miss or take turns off due to being fully paralyzed. For today, unfortunately, we've taken several attempts. We had a couple good runs there, but we're gonna have to say that Parasect is out of there, unfortunately. So, Parasect is very much on the cusp, but it's a Pokemon that just can't quite do enough damage, even with a stab attack. Even with status. You really need the status to come with damage. That's where it seems like it really affects Brock the most. Now, with that being said, let's move on to our next Pokemon, which is going to be Venonat. And Venonat, I'm not sure if it's going to do well or not here. I haven't actually looked at what Venonat's attacks will be, but I think it just has something like Tackle at the beginning of the game. Venomoth, on the other hand, I think will be very similar to Butterfree, and will likely start off with an attack like Confusion. And that's going to make Venomoth a very strong candidate to get through, whereas Venonat is going to be a little more questionable, I think. We've already seen that a lot of these first stage Pokemon that just have normal type moves just don't do very well against Brock. So, there we go. Professor Oak is catching our Venonats, and Gary's gonna push us out of the way like he always does. So Ash is gonna get a Venonat instead. And here we can see that we start off with Tackle and Disable. Now, Disable isn't really good here because, for example, we disabled Tail Whip, so now our opponent can only attack us. That's not good for us. It's going to be the same when we get to Geodude. You might say, oh yeah, why don't you just disable Tackle on the Geodude? Well, then it's only going to be able to use Struggle, and yes, it will do some damage to itself, but we've seen in previous runs, particularly in the Wigglytuff run, where yeah, we had Disable, and we were able to get the Geodude to at least take recoil damage every single turn, but it still does a ton of damage to us, and because it does a lot of damage to us, we don't really have any benefit in using that move. We would have been much better off with just about anything else. Because like here, we want the Eevee to use Tail Whip. So yeah, if we could get the luck to get Disable, to just randomly disable Tackle, sure, then it's just going to sit there and use Tail Whip against us, and that would be fine. But if we disable Tail Whip, then we set it to just attack us every single turn. And because it's got Stab on its Tackle, that's not going to work out very well for us. And again, Venonat, it's not like it's a Pokemon that has great stats. It's not a Pokemon that's going to have, Stab or have any sort of, just attack power that's good enough to get through Brock. I'll be very interested to see later on with some of the really strong normal type Pokemon. Thinking of Pokemon like Tauros, think about later today, Pokemon like Persian, that they could be really interesting because they'll have Stab on these normal type moves, and because they will potentially have high critical hit chances that could help them break through. They're going to be, I think, the most interesting. But really, outside of Snorlax, I'm not very confident in very many normal type Pokemon to get through Brock on minimum battles. Like, Snorlax is going to have the advantage that it's not only getting Stab on its normal type attacks, but on top of that, it's going to start off with rest, meaning that it can take damage and then it can just heal up. And it's going to have the defense plus the HP to be able to use rest effectively. And that might be a good combination against Brock, because we'll basically just stall him out. And it's a workaround on no items in battle. So here we are, we can see that our Venonat is only at level 6 against Geodude on minimum battles. So the Geodude is basically going to take us out in 5 hits. And because we do not have any sort of status move, any sort of high damage dealing move, there's not much we can do. Like, we can disable Tackle, and for one turn it's not going to be able to attack us. And yes, now it's attacking and it's doing recoil, but as you can see, it didn't really make that much of a difference. Because Geodude is pretty strong. It's got good attack, so you know, we can hit it with everything that we got, and we basically get it to half health. And that's with pretty much a perfect run right there. So we can already see that Venonat, you're basically out of there. There's no way that a Venonat is going to get through Brock on anything other than Brock missing Tackle 20 times in a row, which is virtually impossible. So that does not mean, of course, that its evolved form, Venomoth, is going to suffer from the same fate. Now, we're going to see that a lot of these Pokemon today will get to Brock at very low levels. Levels like level 6 here in this run with the Venonat. Oh, sorry, this one I need to reset because that was from a test run earlier. But a Pokemon like Venomoth is going to have the advantage that even though it's going to get to Brock at a very low level, we're going to be using a special type move. And Onix and Geodude are very strong defensively, but neither of those Pokemon have great special. And because these Pokemon don't have great special, it opens up a pretty big opportunity for any Pokemon that uses special moves early in the game, including Fire-type Pokemon, Pokemon whose special moves are not very effective against Brock. Doesn't matter. They're still going to do pretty well on the basis that they have a special move. And here, when we look, we can see that we have Confusion and Supersonic to help this Venomoth out. So we can use either move, but really Confusion is ideal because it has the chance to confuse and it does damage. Whereas Supersonic is just going to confuse the opponent if it connects. So it's really one of these things where we just want to spam Confusion against Brock, I think is going to be the play. We did it already with Butterfree, which also got to Brock only at level 6, because it's in that medium-fast level-up group. So we're going to find that situation where, yeah, there's basically 4 tiers of Pokemon in terms of level-up groups. There's the medium-slow group, which is actually the fastest at the start of the game. That includes all of the starter Pokemon. So Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, etc. They are always going to reach Brock at level 8. Then we have Pokemon in the fast level up group, Pokemon like Clefairy and Clefable. They reach Brock at level 7. All other Pokemon, whether they're in the slow group or the medium fast level up group, reach Brock at level 6. Now, their levels are going to diverge more once we get over to Misty or we get to further parts of the game. But for now, we basically just know that, okay, if a Pokemon's in the medium-slow level-up group, it's going to have to beat Brock at level 6. If it's in the fast level-up group, it's going to have to beat Brock at level 7. If it's in, the medium-slow level-up group is the fastest level-up group early on. So the medium slow level up group will reach Brock at level 8. It's the medium fast Pokemon and the slow level up Pokemon that are going to reach Brock at level 6. So I believe here with Venomoth and Venonat we have a medium fast level up group, if I recall correctly. But if they have decent moves, which legendary Pokemon and a lot of evolved forms are going to have, they can get through, even at level 6. But if you've got really just generic normal type moves, it becomes a challenge. So let's see if our level 6 Venomoth can get through. So we're not going to mess around at all. We're just going to start spamming Confusion. And as we can see, it just does huge amounts of damage against Geodude, because Geodude doesn't have great special. And we immediately level up to level 8, that's good. And now we basically want to take the same strategy here, and Bide does nothing because, yeah, you can use Bide, but if we can take you out in 2 turns, then it doesn't matter. So we can see that Venomoth is not even a contest with Gary, or with Brock. It's just an easy, just take them down. It's not one-shots, but it's fast enough and it's consistent enough that we could probably play this battle 100 times and lose maybe 1 out of 100 based on bad luck. So there we go. Our first winning challenger today was Venomoth. So we will have the chance to roleplay as Koga later in the game. Next up, we're going to go to our Diglett. And when I was a kid, I remember getting to Diglett Cave and basically thinking that Digletts were super weak, because I would go in there usually with a Bulbasaur or Ivysaur or something. In Pokemon Yellow, I would get the Bulbasaur from Cerulean City, and I would get the Squirtle from Vermilion City, and I'd basically just sit there and grind them in Diglett Cave, because as soon as they actually got any stab moves, the Digletts were all like one-shots, because the Digletts aren't very strong. But when I discovered that Dugtrio was in there, and Dugtrio was level 31, that became like my new, like, required every playthrough. I would catch a Dugtrio at level 31. And I thought Dugtrio was like the most powerful Pokemon ever, because Dugtrio, unlike Diglett, would get stab moves right off the bat. It would know like Slash, it would know Dig, of course, Sand Attack. It was an incredibly annoying Pokemon to battle, and it would take out my Pokemon like nothing. But at the same time, it was so powerful that you could just catch one of those before you went to fight Lieutenant Surge and basically win every single time. Now, Diglett, as we can see, and Dugtrio to some degree when we get there, are really kind of glass cannons. They have good attacking stats, but they don't have any sort of defense whatsoever, and they don't have great HP, so they just go down super easily, especially to special type moves, but even to physical moves. Diglett is not going to be very good. Dugtrio will hold up a little bit better, but where they really excel is in speed. The fact that they're so fast allows them to get lots of critical hits in this generation, and that's really where they're going to make up against other Pokemon. But Diglett is going to be a challenge here, even against the Eevee, because all we can do is attack, and the Eevee really only needs a couple hits to take us down. So we really need Eevee to just spam like Tail Whip or something against us. So it looks like it's about a 5-hit KO from here. Yeah. So we did finally get through, which is good, but we can see that even with a level up to level 6, our Diglett only has 17 HP and only 8 defense. If we have to get to Brock at only level 6, I think we can already see that this is going to be a huge, huge challenge. Because we don't have anything to really take advantage of our speed with. If the Diglett started out with Dig, on the other hand, we might actually have a shot on the basis that we would have a stab move, we would maybe only have to take one hit from his Pokemon in order to get through. And when you consider that, yeah, Geodude might tackle us, and that even that level 6 might be enough to take us out, just a single tackle. But assuming that we could survive one hit from the Geodude, the Onix could use something like Screech or Bite or something that would allow us to effectively, just get a free hit in and get a free turn and then be able to use Dig again and take it out, for example. That was scary. That Pidgeotto. So it seems like speed is a big determining factor in whether or not you can escape from wild encounters, and Pidgeotto, being at such a high level, often has a pretty big advantage there. So here we can see that even the Caterpie in Viridian Forest, we're basically a 3-hit KO to it, which is pretty bad. And this would be shocking if this is the second Pokemon that we've gotten to Caterpie and we can't get through Caterpie. It happened when we had Caterpie, and we battled this Caterpie who knows how many times, but we just couldn't get through. Because we just couldn't do enough damage. We really need Caterpie to just spam String Shot, because if it hits us one more time with Tackle, we're out. We almost got it that time, but if the Bug Catcher uses any sort of reasonable moves, we're basically done. Yeah, this is not looking promising. Let's take 2 more attempts, I think, before we just have to give up on this one. Yeah, Caterpie, come on, just use String Shot. And there we have it. Diglett is so weak, so fragile, that even against a Caterpie in the forest, it just couldn't get it done. And based on that, I think we're gonna have to say, Caterpie, you're out of there. Oh, rest in peace, Caterpie. So, Dugtrio, I think, might give us a better run here, because of its moveset, and because, of course, as an evolved form, it has better stats. Plus, when we get to Brock, we're gonna likely have a stab move and Dig. We'll confirm whether or not that is the case. Dugtrio, I was pretty confident could get through, so I didn't even bother messing with it, doing any sort of like playtest with it or anything. The Pokemon that I typically playtest are the ones that I think are going to be right on the cusp of getting through or not. If it seems like it could be really, really on the cusp, sometimes I'll give it a couple attempts to just see if I can find any strategy that seems a little effective, but I try to come in to a lot of these Pokemon with just a fresh perspective, not really knowing what's going to happen. So, as we can see though, Dugtrio here, as I expected, starts with Dig, which is pretty good, and it also has a lot more defense, a lot more attack, and it's one of the fastest Pokemon in the game, so stab and dealing extra damage are going to be, with critical hits, is going to be a big factor here. I think this time we will be able to get through Caterpie. I'll at least put that out there. I am pretty confident that if we have to use Growl, we will, but we're going to be able to get through Caterpie with this Dugtrio. And Dig is not going to be very effective against Caterpie, but because ground type attacks are not very effective against Bug-type Pokemon, but the base damage of Dig is very high. It's like 100, I think, in this generation. It's the same strength as Earthquake, I know that. But because of that, we might have to just see if that is the optimal play here to use Dig against Caterpie, or Scratch and Growl is the way to go. But the fact that we have at least a decent stat here is a big boost. So we'll save just in case before the trainer, and here we go, let's try it. So yeah, we can see that we're doing a fair amount of damage there with Dig, even though it's not very effective, and that was a cakewalk relative to what we were looking at with Diglett. Now, when we get into Brock, of course, the move is going to be Dig. We do also have the possibility of using Growl to reduce damage, if that seems to be a factor in any way, shape, or form, but I think we're just going to start off with Dig. And super effective, and he missed, so we get through to Onix on full health with our level 6 Dugtrio. We've leveled up to level 8. And yeah, you can use Bite. It doesn't matter if you're a 2-hit KO. So, with Dugtrio, as I kind of expected, we were able to get through Brock with no troubles whatsoever. Just the addition of that one stab move in Dig is all it takes to be able to get through, and yeah, we have our second Pokemon that was able to do it. So far, Venomoth and Dugtrio. I don't think either of those are really surprises in any way, shape, or form, especially looking at their movesets. But now, I think, is where this set of Pokemon is going to get interesting. Meowth is just going to start with Scratch and Growl, so I don't think it's going to have much of a chance here. But Persian, with its high speed and its high critical hit rate, plus Stab, might be a Pokemon that's actually able to get through, and if it can, that's going to be pretty interesting, because that's going to be our first... Basically, so far, we haven't had any normal type Pokemon get through except for Clefable. And Clefable did it by spamming Metronome, basically. We spammed Metronome until we got a super effective attack to take out Brock's Pokemon. And we were able to use Minimize over and over and over again to basically make it impossible to hit us. So, yeah. Scratch and Growl, as I said. And Meowth, I think, is going to do just fine here against the Eevee. We have Stab on our Scratch. I think we have decent attack. Decent attack. But it's really speed where these Pokemon are going to be the strongest. Just having the advantage of speed is pretty huge when we're facing Brock. Pretty much all Pokemon outspeed the Geodude. Geodude does not have great speed, but when it comes to the Onix, outspeeding is pretty huge, because if you can outspeed the Onix, then that means you're going to be able to hit it before it uses Bide, and you're going to be able to choose your attacks after that. So when you see that it uses Bide, you can use a non-damage dealing move, for example, in order to get through, and it can use Bide, but you won't end up taking any damage, and the more often it uses Bide, the more times that you just get to hit it once, then use a status move, or a debuff kind of move, and then just sit there and wait for him to finish, and just rinse and repeat. So, here again, Caterpie in the forest I don't think is going to be any sort of challenge, but we can see that Meowth is only at level 6, and generally speaking, when you don't have any sort of stab move, any sort of status move that does damage, and you're at level 6, that's a pretty bad sign against Brock. But without further ado, let's try it out. So let's start by just seeing how much Scratch does. As we can see, Scratch basically does nothing. So what else can we try? We can try Growling and getting the damage from the Geodude down. We finally got it to do just 2 damage to us, which probably is as low as it can go. But as we can see, that didn't really work for us. So here, we get critical hit and we're out. Let's try just one more attempt here to try to get our attacks off, but as we can see, even when we've gotten its attack as low as we can get it, and then we go into hitting and we get a couple misses, we just can't do enough damage to the Geodude in order to get through. So Meowth is out of there. And with that, we've finished the first half of today's episode. Out of the first 7 Pokemon, only 2 were able to make it through. But Persian offers an immediate opportunity to maybe get the second half of our Pokemon today off on the right foot. Look at these Pokemon: Persian, Psyduck, Golduck, Mankey, Primeape, Growlithe, and Arcanine. Which ones do you think will have a chance to get through? My bias is definitely on Persian. Primeape, I have confidence. Golduck, I'm not really sure about its moveset. I never really used Golduck or Psyduck back in the day. Psyduck from the anime just looked like a kind of stupid Pokemon, so I never really wanted to use it. So I would take out other trainers' Psyducks, but I would never really use it myself. So I'm not actually sure what moves it's gonna know. Like, if Golduck is gonna have a water-type move, then that could be really good. But if it ends up having no sorts of stab moves, then it could be a repeat of other Pokemon that we've seen so far. Of course, if they have a water-type move, they're just gonna completely destroy Brock. But Persian here, we can already see some interesting things. So it has Scratch and Growl still, but it has Bite, which is normal type in this generation. It's Stab, and it has the chance to make the opponent flinch. And it also has Screech, which lowers defense by 2 stages. So if we get 3 Screeches off on his Pokemon, we're going to be dealing a heck of a lot more damage than we would otherwise. So we're going to go ahead and start by Screeching a couple times there at Eevee, and then it's just a one-shot with Bite. Bite, of course, is not an amazingly strong attack, but in the hands of a Persian that can also get crits and can also lower defense of the opponent, it's going to be pretty good. Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind here, when we're talking about status moves, is that when you debuff moves, I guess I should say. So debuff moves like Screech or Growl. When you use a debuff move, something that lowers special or lowers defense, for example, and then you attack and you get a critical hit, in Generation 1, it's actually a bad thing, because critical hits just ignore all stat changes completely. They just basically do double the damage of the normal range of that attack. So if that attack was normally doing 3 damage, a critical hit's going to do like 6 damage, maybe 7 damage depending on rounding in the background. But on the flip side, if you had lowered the opponent's defense by 6 stages, you would be doing significantly more damage than that. And that can be a pretty big factor with a Pokemon like Persian, because once you've done 3 Screeches on Geodude, for example, you actually don't want to see critical hits anymore. But Persian has a really high critical hit rate, meaning that we actually will not want to see those crits when we get to that point. But without further ado, here we are. As we can see, our speed is awesome. It's very close to what Dugtrio was sporting when we were here. And our moveset is much better than Meowth. So, this is the chance for normal types to redeem themselves. Let's find out if it can be done. So let's just start with a bite, and we can see a critical hit right there, but it didn't do a whole lot of damage. But Geodude did flinch. Now, if we add a couple of screeches, we can do a lot more damage, but then we're still getting critical hits, and that's not what we want to see. So let's see if instead we growl first to lower his attack, and then we screech 3 times, and then we start biting. That seems like a pretty simple run-through right there. So the strategy, I think, is gonna be to use Screech as many times as we can. And now we want to growl. And now we want to bite, except when it uses bite, and then we'll just growl. Now we don't want those critical hits. Like, whenever we critical hit, we do very little damage. I'm not sure it's quite in the range. Yeah, there we go. So, as we can see with Persian, by using Growl, by using Screech, and then having a stronger stab attack, we were able to get through, and it was really the critical hits working against us in that case. But it was still enough that Persian is able to get through Brock with minimum battles, even coming into Brock at level 6 with a type disadvantage. So that is a pretty nice run. Let's go on to the next Pokemon now, Psyduck. And as I said before, I really don't know Psyduck very well. It was really never a Pokemon that I liked to use as a kid. And the Pokemon anime, like, it was always kind of the idiot. Like, it would be cute, but it would be doing something that was just completely ridiculous, and they were like, hey, Misty's Psyduck is just, like, laying on its head when it should be attacking or something like that. So I always just felt like Psyduck was supposed to be like the original lazy do-nothing Pokemon, Psyduck and Slowpoke, basically. And I don't know, I always just felt like they weren't very interesting Pokemon to use. Because the fact that they were so dumb probably meant that they were so weak, was the way that I felt as a kid, at least. So, funny enough, we might find out that Slowpoke does really well in this run, but right now Psyduck, we can see that it only knows Scratch, and this is going to be a problem, because Scratch is not a stab move, it doesn't have any sort of status debuff move that could help it to stall out the Geodude, or at least reduce damage from the Geodude, and I'm willing to bet that this Psyduck probably doesn't level up very fast. And if we get to Brock at level 6 with this Psyduck, it's really just game over. There's no chance that we're going to be able to do enough damage, I think, to get through Brock. So, let's continue on and see, but I'm not very confident in this run already. Because, yeah, there's just not going to be a whole lot of good that can come out of a Psyduck that only knows Scratch, I think. It's going to be very akin to the Meowth run, except we don't have Stab, or, you know, the Venonat run, where we just don't have any way to reduce the damage that's being done to us. We don't have any way to deal enough damage to make the battle consistent. think Caterpie is gonna go down okay. Yeah, there we go. We got through the Caterpie, but yeah, getting the Brock with a level 6 Psyduck does not bode well at all for this run. So, without further ado, let's take a couple attempts, but I think we're going to see pretty quickly that this one is just not even happening. Looks like about 4 hits, and we're out of there, so yep, he's doing quite a bit of damage. I don't think that one's possible, guys. So, with that, Psyduck, you are out of there. Next up, we have Golduck. And Golduck is definitely a much cooler looking Pokemon than Psyduck. I always thought that in this version in particular, the Golduck sprite looks really menacing, which maybe bodes well for it, but it really depends on its moveset. Of course, if Golduck comes in with a move like Water Gun or something like that, then we're going to be in good shape. But if Golduck comes in with really anything else, we're not going to be in good shape. And this is clearly one that I play tested earlier and saved right next to Gary, or sorry, right next to Brock. But there are 2 cases where I saved next to Brock. I saved with some Pokemon that I think are on the cusp, and I saved with some Pokemon that I was actually able to beat him with. So we're just going to have to see which one this turns out to be. So let's look at our Golduck for a minute here. So Golduck has a couple advantages. It has Tail Whip, it has Disable, but it still only has Scratch, and it's only going to reach Brock at level 6. Now, it's going to have much better stats than the Psyduck, in terms of HP, in terms of defense, in terms of speed, in terms of attack. But attack is not really a big factor when we're up against Brock, because his Pokemon resists a lot of physical types. It just doesn't really make much of a difference. But having higher defense and higher HP can be a factor. When we started changing so that we would use Pokemon only with max DVs after episode 1, a big part of that was because our Butterfree and our Bulbasaur didn't have great DVs in HP and in defense. And what happened as a result was that Brock was able to knock them out pretty consistently. But when we went to max DVs and we had as much HP as was possible for the Pokemon at that level, and as much defense as was possible for the Pokemon at that level, we suddenly found that Brock could be consistently beaten with reasonable strategy. So that's where sometimes just a couple more HP and better stats can be enough to get through. But given how far Psyduck was from getting through Brock, I'm not super confident in this one, actually. And part of what makes Brock such a barrier in this game is that there really are no opportunities to improve your Pokemon before him outside of leveling up. He's the only gym leader where you don't have any rare candies, you don't have any TMs that you can use. And because of that, like you just have to beat him on the power of your moves. So of course, typically a Pokemon like this, we would probably be, spamming, like, just playing in Viridian Forest for hours and hours and hours trying to level it up to get some sort of move that would give us a decent chance against Brock. But here again, we can see that this is not looking very consistent in any way, shape, or form. And Tail Whip doesn't seem to really lower his defense enough that we can do a whole lot of damage. So we're getting him just to orange health, and that's basically it. So with that, I think Golduck is going to have to be another Pokemon that's just out of the race. So sorry Golduck, but you are out of there. Next up, Mankey, the monkey Pokemon. I know there's some new monkeys in the newer versions, but I always like Mankey the best because it looks permanently angry. And Mankey, of course, was added before Brock in this version of the game, in Pokemon Yellow, as well as some other changes, like lowering the level at which Butterfree learns Confusion, giving the Nidoran line double kick at level 12 as opposed to level 40 something that it was in the original red and blue versions. And all of these were designed to make it easier for players to get through Brock when starting with a Pikachu, which I always found kind of interesting. That, okay, in the end they decided that Brock was too difficult and that they had to give us something that would help us to get through in Yellow version. And of course Pikachu ends up learning Double Team in this version at level 15, so it can, like, theoretically you could level up to level 15 and then spam Double Team, and it learns Quick Attack at level 11 if I recall correctly. So it would learn Quick Attack. It would also learn Tail Whip in this version, which in the original version of Pokemon, it didn't learn Tail Whip in Red and Blue. And all of these things were designed to try to make Brock possible for players in this game, because otherwise if you start with a Pikachu and you don't level up and you try to go fight Brock, you're going to be in for a really bad time, unless you get a Surfing Pikachu, like we did for our run. And that basically would have made the game unplayable. Like, they would have crushed little kids' dreams all over the world. People who had watched the anime and said, Ash was able to beat Brock with a team of Pidgeotto, Butterfree, and Pikachu, though actually he only used Pikachu in the anime, and a sprinkler system. But yeah, so I can just imagine that they were really scrambling to find ways to make this game possible for young players who wouldn't necessarily understand strategy and understands, like, super effective typings and so on and so forth. But they didn't really tell you any of this. They just kind of stuck these things into the game, and yeah, hopefully they'll level up and figure it out. Which was always kind of interesting in this version. Now, the issue that we have here is that we've got our Mankey, but it's only level 6. It doesn't learn Low Kick until level 9 in this generation. And because of that, we're going in with only Leer and Scratch. Now, we have good attack, but I think we're going to see pretty quickly that the same as with Golduck just now, we're just not going to be able to do enough damage in order to make this work. And on that basis, I think we can already say that Mankey, you're out of there. Now, Primeape is going to be a much more interesting run, I think, because Primeape, first off, it's a very powerful Pokemon, and second off, I believe it will start off with a stab move in Low Kick. And if it does, then of course Low Kick is going to be our ticket to beating Brock, even at level 6. Like we've already seen with tons of Pokemon, that Brock is possible at very low levels, provided you have a stab move. It's only when you don't have a stab move that it becomes difficult, but even then, maybe you don't have a stab move, but you have a move that is not resisted and adds status, so something like Confusion with Venomoth and Butterfree allowed both of those Pokemon to get through Brock at level 6. What that means for them later in the playthrough is anybody's guess. It's probably really going to come down to their movesets and how their types match up against different gym leaders, but at least for getting through Brock, that move, Low Kick, is going to be a huge factor. So here, we could just Low Kick the Eevee and it's out, right? Absolute piece of cake. And Primeape has great attack, it has good speed, so even at level 6, I think we're going to do well. And on top of that, we also have Karate Chop, which is a virtually guaranteed critical hit. Karate Chop is only normal type in this version, which I always thought was kind of stupid. Like, why would you have a fighting type and then make Karate Chop a normal type move? It's the same for some other moves like Comet Punch. Why would Comet Punch be normal type when it's a punch? So it should be like a fighting type move. That just makes sense, right? The developers at this point really seemed like they didn't have a clear idea of how they wanted to use typings or anything. I think the most obvious example of that was with dragon types, because they put dragon types into the game, but they only put one, the Dratini line, Dratini, Dragonair, Dragonite, and then they only put one dragon type move in the game, which was Dragon Rage, which just does 40 HP of damage no matter what. Basically meaning that dragon types were pretty much worthless. Because they were so hard-walled by ice types in this generation that, Blizzard being like 90% accurate or something like that, just made them completely worthless. But anyway, I digress. Here we are, we're at Brock. We have Low Kick. I has Low Kick. I kick Geodude down. I has Low Kick. Oh, I got killed by the Onix from Bide. That's the only thing we have to be careful of, is Low Kick can miss. So, but again, I has Low Kick. Leer, 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 Leer. I has Low Kick. Boom, dead. So, as we can see, an attack like Low Kick basically made Brock a complete joke. And just with that, we were able to get through with a pretty simple moveset. It's just the addition of Low Kick. And that's why I think they added the Mankey. Getting Low Kick and Mankey being so early in the game, in this version, was because, yeah, you could get a level 9 Mankey and you could just go and sweep through Brock with no trouble. Now, we're on to our last two Pokemon today, Growlithe and Arcanine. And now Growlithe, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it starts with pretty much the most worthless move in this generation, and that is Roar. Roar, for anybody who doesn't know or who played later generations, in trainer battles it has no effect whatsoever. It just scares away wild Pokemon in Generation 1. If I recall correctly, in Generation 2, Roar can be used to basically force the opponent to switch out his Pokemon, which, if you can set up something like Spikes, for example, would enable you to basically just stall his team out by forcing them in and out every turn. As long as you could be faster than them, you might get an advantage. But Roar here it's unaffected. Now, we do have Bite, which is a much stronger normal type move to start with, and as we've seen with some previous Pokemon, it has the advantage of possibly causing a flinch. But unlike Persian, who was able to use Bite to great effect against Brock, we're going to run into, I think, a pretty big barrier here, in that Growlithe does not have any way to lower Brock's defenses. Meaning that we're really just going to be relying on flinch luck when we bite his Pokemon. Especially against the Geodude. We're basically just going to have to hope that we can get it to flinch, and then try to take it down by just repeatedly biting it. And getting flinch after flinch after flinch. If we started with Ember, that would have been a much better move, probably. Like, I'm not sure, but the reason I'm not so confident in Bite here is because we had Bite once before where it didn't work, and that was on Golduck. Golduck was able to use Bite, but it just wasn't doing enough damage without any sort of debuff on Brock. And we were basically stuck in the situation of trying to get him to flinch, which just didn't work out. Now here we can see that our Growlithe just leveled up. Growlithe and Arcanine, being legendary Pokemon as they are in the slow level up group, which is the absolute slowest group at the start of the game, meaning that they will not level up off of the rival, and they can only level up once we get to the Bug Catcher in Viridian Forest, and then against Brock we're always going to get here at level 6. So let's try our Bite strategy here, and that's one flinch, that was good, but we really need him to flinch a whole lot more than that if we're gonna get through. So we really need like critical hit flinch, like multiple times in a row. And I think we can see right there that this one just really isn't working out. The Growlithe just doesn't have any way to debuff or to reduce the damage that it's taking from the Geodude. Roar is completely unaffected or ineffective against opponents, and yeah, we just don't have the stats that we would need. So unfortunately, we're going to go ahead and say right there that Growlithe is out for today. Now, we have one more Pokemon to try today, and it is, in fact, as I've been building up, the very first legendary Pokemon in Generation 1. It is the first Pokemon that was available to the player in Red version, where just before Cerulean City, you could catch a Growlithe. Once you got to Cerulean City, you could buy the Firestone and just immediately evolve your own Arcanine, which I would do 100% of the time in Red version. And then you could go and fight Erica with this legendary dog, and hopefully just wreck her team, which is pretty much what I did as a kid. That was part of my playthrough strategy, was catch my Growlithe, evolve it into Arcanine, and then just go wreck Misty. Or go wreck Erica, rather. Now we can see that its moveset is quite a bit stronger. It still has Roar, but now we have a Leer, we have Ember, and we have Takedown. And Takedown is going to be very strong. As we can see, we've almost one-hit the Eevee with Takedown. Yes, it does recoil damage, so we're not going to use it against the Geodude. That would be stupid. We'd be doing very little damage and taking recoil. But if we're against the Onix, and we manage to get the Onix's defense down enough, it might be worth looking at if Takedown does more damage than Ember at that point. It's possible because Ember is not a very powerful move, but the benefit that it has is that it's special, and it plays on the fact that Geodude and Onix have low special. On the flip side, if we had the Onix using a lot of bites, and thus we were using a lot of leers to just buy turns, basically, and avoid taking damage from its bite, we might reach a point where Takedown does more damage than Ember, but then we just have to be careful of getting, of course, knocked out by our own recoil damage. So it will really depend on how much HP we have when we get to Onix. Now the other thing that we saw just there, even with the Caterpie, is that we have the ability to burn with Ember. And we saw with Ninetales, with Charmeleon and Charizard, that Ember and getting burns off on Brock is an incredibly good strategy. If we can get a burn turn 1, we're going to cut their damage down so much and force a full heal that I think we will be able to get through. Now here, we're using Ember, but we didn't get any burns, so that was not a very good run. Here we really want the burn. Come on. Okay, critical hit works too. There's the burn. And as we can see, the damage that the Geodude did immediately drops. And there we go, we burned Onix. And now Onix's damage is also going to be down. And 2 attempts, we're through. So even with a type disadvantage, even going in at level 6, even being part of the slow level up group, Arcanine is a legendary Pokemon, and as such, it has no issues whatsoever in getting through Brock. So, I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode in our Brock Minimum Battles series. Next time, we will be coming back with more Pokemon to challenge Brock, and let's see exactly which Pokemon we'll do next week. So, typically we want to do about 15 Pokemon per episode. We've done 14 a couple times so that we could end exactly on the same Pokemon. But next time, we will have Poliwag, Poliwhirl, Poliwrath, Abra. I think we already know Abra is not going to be able to do it. It's only going to know Teleport at the beginning of the game. I doubt it will get through Viridian Forest, much less get through Brock. But then we have Kadabra and Alakazam, which are definitely some of the favorites in these runs. Next, we get Machop, Machoke, and Machamp. So more fighting-type Pokemon that might have a really easy time against Brock. Bellsprout, Weeping Bell, and Victory Bell. These Pokemon, I think, are going to be absolute cakewalks against Brock. And then finally, next time we're going to finish with Tentacool and Tentacruel, which means we may be using some more Wrap strats against Brock. So that's going to be coming next time in our next episode. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed today's content, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, comment below if you think that we could have used a different strategy, or if you think that this whole idea is terrible, go ahead and put it down below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you guys next week.